Okay. I haven't recorded in 2 weeks. And in that 2 weeks, all hell has broken out in this studio. And by that, I just mean that the hue and the saturation got somehow changed. There was an update to the program, and when it does the update, it removes the microphone. If you've been, the color doesn't look right now, but if you've been on my channel long enough, every now and then I'll upload a video and there's no sound. You can't hear me talking. You can hear the video, but you can't hear me talking because there's an update on the program. And when it does, it goes to default instead of the microphone that I put in. I'm popping those P's again. So every now and then, it's very annoying when I took these 2 weeks off, which was great. Took the 2 weeks after my birthday and through the holiday. Oh, it was wonderful. And and then my first day back at work yesterday, I thought I was going to record last night. It was a 12-hour day. I left at 6:30 in the morning and I didn't get home until it was about 7:15. Fed the animals, took a shower, and it was like 7:50. And I ended up crawling into bed at 8:10. I was asleep by 8:30. I was done. Oh, but it was a little easier day today. So we're gonna do a couple of videos. I started this one a couple weeks ago. It's dinner time for me, so I'm gonna eat and then watch this and throw comments in when necessary. I had to crack a root beer. Got my water. Got my peach tea and my pomegranate blueberry acai tea. Still hot. And got some pizza. So strap in. This is going to be I think another 21-minute video. Was it going to be 21 minutes? Something like that. We'll just call it 21 minutes. Why not? So I'm going to shut up before we get started, though. I can't shut up yet. I've already clicked the thumbs up, but if you can do that for me, that helps out tremendously. Subscribe to the channel. That helps. And you can also donate to the channel through the thanks button. All donations are appreciated. And if you do donate, you can request a video and your name is sponsoring that video. Okay? You can still request a video without donating. It just takes a little bit more time. And Dr. Roy. And this, by the way, is Dr. Roy gives a brief overview of the U.S. presidency.
A French guy, his name is the Marquis de Montesquieu, goes, "Oh my God, that was nuts. Look what the English did. They basically lost a whole century between civil wars and tyranny and inglorious coup d'etats." And he's like, "Dude, why would you do that? I have an idea. Why don't you do a 3-branch government like they used to do in the past?" And that's where the idea for the 3-branch government came from for us. In fact, Dr. Donald Lutz, who just passed away, had his grad students, I don't know, a couple of decades ago, 3 decades ago, go through and read all the founding fathers' letters they wrote to each other. And every time they hit a philosopher or a political thinker's name, they'd put a tick mark next to the name, thinking that John Locke would win. He would be the one mentioned the most. That was the conventional wisdom. It was the Marquis de Montesquieu. John Locke came in second place. So in other words, they were reading the Marquis de Montesquieu. They loved his 3-branch government idea. They implemented it. Of course, we don't want to call it king, but we debated that. There were 2 times when monarchy was on the table. One, right as the revolution was ending. The army went to George Washington and said, "We're ready to support you to be our first king." He said, "Ben Franklin is writing a constitution. Let's see if that works. If it does, I don't want to be king. If it doesn't work, come back to me. We'll talk about it."
He never said, "Come back to me, we'll talk about it." He never said that. That's false. He basically told them that we have to give this a shot. Otherwise, what did we fight for? He never said, come back to me.
Turns out Ben Franklin's Constitution was absolute garbage. It's the Articles of Confederation. It didn't work. It was the most poorly thought out constitution in human history. And then we have to have a constitutional convention to dump it and replace it with the current constitution in a coup d'etat, because they were not authorized to dump the articles. They were authorized to amend the articles. That's the definition of a coup, when you replace the government without the authorization to replace the government. Of course, the articles...
They were replacing the government. Everyone there kind of knew what they were doing, but some states were holding out that they didn't want to dump it. The people themselves had no idea. And in a way, I don't know if the people really cared, because the previous wasn't... It was a government to the people, but the people didn't understand how worthless it was. So these people were brought together because of their minds, and Washington just because of who he was. And they had decided that they needed to make some changes. And you could say it was a coup because they threw it out, but you could also say they made changes by completely changing it. So they did what they said they were going to do. You know what I mean?
were so ineffectual.
You can see it one way, you can see it the other.
The coup d'etat is happening 2 blocks away, and it took months to transpire, and they couldn't do anything to stop it. And there were members of the government in the coup. Talk about inside job. But at the convention, Alexander Hamilton suggested a monarchy a second time. In other words, it was never predetermined that we would become the republic that we were. It's just there were enough people who were pushing for a republic that it worked.
So I don't have this one on yet because I don't want them to
Okay, right, feedback.
give feedback off of
But
each other.
you want to charge it?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
So that one should work.
All right, thanks. All right, testing. All right, okay, so here's what Madison wants to do. He wants to create a republic. So I know we have to stop for a moment and make sure we got our definitions in place. Because the United States has successfully destroyed the meaning of the word democracy. George Orwell tried to warn us about this. He wrote an essay on the English language. He realized nobody was reading it. Went, how can I get this information to people? Went, what if I turned it into a novel? And then he wrote 1984, 1948, published it in 49. That's how he got the name that's how he got the year. He just flipped the 4 and the 8. And tried to explain to us what he saw unfolding in front of his eyes, which is the following. So the way he explains it in 1984 wouldn't work. What Orwell said was there's a Newspeak dictionary produced every few years where they purge the words from the dictionary. You can't use those words anymore. When you think about it, that can't be done, right? Because for you to know what words you can't use, you will have had to have memorized the previous dictionary. Then you'll have to memorize the new dictionary and then be able to hold in your head which words were missing. I don't think there are enough people in the world smart enough to do that for this to be an effective anything. So Orwell's method in the book doesn't make sense. It's like in Lord of the Flies when they're trying to use Piggy's glasses to light a fire. It's the wrong lens, right? It's that. But you're reading and you're okay with it because it doesn't matter if it works or not. That's not what the story is about. The story is about the destruction of the English language in this particular case, but it's just language in general. Here's how we did it. We did Orwell's nightmare. If you look, every year the Oxford English Dictionary adds new words. We didn't do it by deleting words. We did something way more brilliant. We introduced the thesaurus to the schools. So you go, I'm gonna look up, and you look up a word, whatever it is, and there are 5 words there. And you go, oh wow, there are 6 words that mean the exact same thing. I can just make my poem rhyme by picking one of these other words. The reason why we have those words is because they don't mean the same thing. The reason you have words is so that you can have accuracy, or at least accuracy. Like maybe your goal was precision. See what I did there? But you're never going to get precision, so accuracy is good enough. See what I did there? And then what happens is over time, you begin to lose the original meaning and a new meaning is replaced. A word stands for a concept. If I can get you to do this with 6 words, I've just gotten rid of 5 concepts. That's happened to the word democracy. One of my favorite words that it's happened to is decimate. They were decimated. Oh, you mean 1 out of every 10 was killed? No, they were annihilated. Oh no, annihilated is a different word. Decimate means to kill 1 out of every 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9. Oh, I'm so sorry. It's horrible. If a Roman legion didn't do what it was supposed to, they'd line them up and they'd count to 10 and then kill that legionnaire. So they would decimate the legion and then reissue the order they didn't follow the first time. And if they still didn't do it, they could redecimate the legion. Now, you do it enough times, you're going to shrink the size of the legion. But just to do it once is just to kill 1/10. It's not bad. It's not bad. It's not like annihilation. You know, that's terrible. Who wants that? Isn't that cool? Another one that I love is hypothesis and theory. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've heard people go, evolution is just a theory. Global warming is just a theory. So a theory is the next best thing we have to a proven fact. Hypothesis is what they probably meant. It's an untested idea. And, you know, you should hope that most of the time hypotheses get ejected, because that's when you make a discovery. That's your goal, is to find your hypothesis was wrong. So don't become a scientist if you're an egomaniac, right? Because you'll do bad science, because you'll be like, oh, I'm going to just change my hypothesis. No, you're supposed to find out it's wrong. That's the goal. Anyway, in other words, saying, you know, global warming is just a theory is equivalent to saying global warming is just a fact, I can ignore it. You know what I'm saying? It's not quite there, it's just really close. Like, you know, the theory that, for example, there were God particles, the Higgs boson. Well, the math lined up. We tested in a laboratory, and then we found Higgs. Y'all aren't moved by Higgs. I remember where I was when I heard on the radio on BBC they confirmed discovering Higgs. I was on a dirt road in Vermont driving to a dog kennel to pick up my dog. And I'm listening to BBC, and they go, we have confirmed that we have discovered the Higgs boson, it's real. I burst into tears, wrecked my car. No, but I did burst into tears. I didn't wreck my car. Is it I'm not loud enough? Is that what you're doing? I am loud enough? No. Okay, I'm not loud enough? I can fix that. I think. There's this incredible machine back here. Hello? Is that better? Yes. Okay. I don't know why we have that machine back there. It is so unbelievably complicated. I think like a PhD wouldn't be enough to operate it. I think it's something you would put in a TV studio and you were shooting like soap operas or something. Like, I don't think we need it in this room. You know what we need in this room is soundproofing on the wall. Like, instead of spending $10 million for that machine, we could have probably spent like, I don't know, $2,000 for a little bit of soundproofing, and it got a long way. I don't know how we ended up with it, but we did. So, here, let me do it this way. Let me just tell you what the definition for monarchy, republic, and democracy are, and then you can see why we lost the concept and how it's actually kind of painful. So monarchy is one person's in charge. Now, it doesn't literally need to be one person. It could be 20 people. In other words, there could be a monarch, and the monarch has a cabinet, and the cabinet has delegated authority to the cabinet members, and there are cabinet members making individual choices without constantly going back to the monarch and getting their approval. But nonetheless, there's essentially one person in charge, right? Everything revolves around that one. That person could even give all their authority to the cabinet, and they could just become like the supervisor. But because the buck stops with that one individual, there's really just one person in charge. In a aristocracy or a republic.
So he said the buck stops here, and I'm kind of giggling because on the bookshelf right in front of me, I got that Harry Truman, The Buck Stops Here, what he had on his desk. So it just kind of made me laugh.
They're actually synonymous, which is fun. We do the denotation, denotatively they're synonymous. Connotatively, we think that aristocracies are hereditary and republics are elected. But there's nothing in the definition of those two words. That's like the one time there's two words that have the same meaning. You could totally have an electoral aristocracy, or you could call your system a hereditary republic. The most serene Republic of Venice was hardly an electoral republic, right? Just because you're a republic doesn't mean there were free and fair elections. So in a republic or an aristocracy, the word aristocracy, aristos, means excellent. So it's supposed to be ruled by the excellent. The idea is you would find the few, it needs to be the few too. Few, excellent, and of course they were Greeks, so men. They had no belief that women should rule. And whenever a woman did in the neighborhood, they went to war with them. You would have a few excellent men, and they would rule in the name of the people. That was the idea behind aristocracy. Democracy, and there haven't been all that many. They're pretty rare. Democracy doesn't have elections. You can tell if you're in a democracy. If you have elections, you're not. Because in an electoral republic, you're electing the people who are going to make the decisions in your name. But in a democracy, the voting citizens make the decisions directly all the time. So like, I'll hear people say direct democracy. That's redundant. That was brought to you by the Department of Redundancy Department. You don't need to say direct. It's like family feud. Feud already means a fight between families. You don't need to say family. So redundant. The family fight family. Like, I don't understand why you had to say that extra family. It's not necessary. In a democracy, the people will vote on whether or not to fix the potholes directly, the voting citizens. They'll vote on whether or not to build a wall, whether or not to invade their neighbor, whether or not to sign a treaty for trade with somebody. In a republic, you elect, or they're hereditary, a group of people who make the decisions in your name. So think about it. It's a representative form of government. It's not the public, it's the republic. You're not present, you're represented. Isn't that cool? So you have representatives in your absence being present for you. And the language even spells it out. There's no confusion about any of this. So, for the record, Athens was psychotically misogynistic. Like, the Athenians actually believed that women were deformed men. They believed that if a man's health wasn't good, and he maybe had been drinking a little too much or whatever, and then he goes and impregnates a woman, you're going to produce a female baby because she'll be deformed. Like, that's a level of, oh my God, hatred that's hard for me to wrap my mind around. And so in Athenian society, women were not allowed to have any form of public presence unless they were prostitutes or priestesses. Prostitutes, for obvious reasons, you need to be able to advertise your wares. And then the priestesses, this is ironic, Athens was named after the goddess Athena. So they boxed themselves into a corner. Of course, they had to have the high priestess of Athena had to be a woman. It would have been weird otherwise. And then, of course, the Oracle of Delphi, right? So there were so many women that had these religious positions. If you were not a prostitute or a priestess, you were not allowed to be seen in public without covering your face and your hair. You were supposed to cover your face and hair when you went out of the house. You could go to fetch water, and on certain religious occasions, you could leave the house. You were supposed to be confined to the house. Women were supposed to be private, men were supposed to be public. That's how the Athenians set this up. So women in Athens had no voting rights, even if they were citizens. There was no mechanism for a woman to be able to vote, in part because you had to complete military service, and women weren't allowed in the military. Now, you go, well, women usually aren't. That's not true at all. Most armies in human history traveled with women. Many armies had women combatants. The Persian Empire, for example, fielded an all-woman archery division. The Arabs in the original conquest, there were women combatants at the Battle of Yarmouk, right? It is actually weird that there's absolutely no role for women in combat for the Athenians. In part because you want the numbers, but just because there might have been some really talented warriors, you don't want to cut that out. You want to make sure you tap into all that. Not everybody needs to make babies. Some people can die at 18 on the battlefield. It's okay. So, women were so not allowed to have public life, you weren't allowed to say a woman's name out loud in public. Because it was like invoking her into the public sphere. So you would say, oh, my wife, or the mother of my child. That's how you could get around it. Isn't that cool? Oh, the good old days. I love reminiscing too. They had slavery. They had human sacrifice. You want me to say it again? They had human sacrifice. We have the archaeological evidence, and Plato says it, and Homer says it. So we have eyewitnesses confirming it, and then we have the archaeological evidence. The Temple of Zeus has a 12-year-old boy underneath it. He was clearly, and then put under the temple to make Zeus happy. Foreigners, immigrants, had no mechanism to become naturalized citizens. There was no pathway to citizenship, period. I don't care if you lived to 110 and you moved to Athens when you were 1 day old. You married an Athenian, and together you made a bunch of Athenian citizen babies. You will never be an Athenian citizen. It can't be done. There was no path for naturalization. It's brutal when you think about it. So by the time you were done, no more than 20% of the public, you couldn't be a slave to vote. You could be a citizen, so once you got your freedom, you could vote. But as long as you were a slave, you couldn't vote. So at any given moment, no more than 20% of the people living in Athens were eligible voting citizens. So when we look at that, we go, oh, that's so undemocratic. That's not the right term. What you mean is that's so illiberal. Or you could do, oh, that's so unsocialist. Because socialists and liberals, and I mean liberal in the broad sense, not the American sense, Democrat liberal. I mean true liberal, which would include conservatives, populists, libertarians, and liberals. In that sense, most people, at least until, maybe the last 10 years, who identified as liberal would believe there should be a pathway to citizenship for immigrants, that we shouldn't probably have slavery, that women should have the right to vote. You know what I'm saying? So, but that has nothing to do with democracy. Democracy is strictly this: rule by the many. Demos means many. Democracy is literally rule by the many. In the United States, our Congress is 535 members. We also elect a vice president and a president on the same ticket. So we elect 537 people. There are 340 million of us. So in your mind, write 340 million, make sure you get all the zeros, put a line over it, and then put 537 on top of that. If we were Athens, and we had slavery, and we didn't have any pathway for immigrants to become citizens, right? And women couldn't vote. It's still 20%. So put the 340 again, 340 million, put the line over the top, it would be 68 million. That's what many looks like. 537 is what few looks like. That's how far we are from a democracy. It's not even, we're talking orders of magnitude separate from a democracy. By the way, there was no freedom of religion in Athens. There was no freedom of speech. They were still a democracy. They were just an illiberal democracy. All right, we good? Okay, so Madison wanted to make a republic. That was his goal. But a republic is ruled by the few, not ruled by the one. So he built it into the Constitution. What he did was, he made Article 1 be about the legislature, about Congress. Article 2 is about the presidency. When you write your Constitution, the most important piece comes first. Also, you're going to want to flesh out the most important piece. So if you look at it just in terms of words, there's about twice as many words for Congress than there are for the presidency, and there's like 3 times as many words or 4 times as many words for the presidency as there is for the judiciary. The judiciary is 2 really small paragraphs that say almost nothing. It's actually like, wow, you made this too vague, I think. In other words,
I'm going to go ahead and stop it there. Go back. You made it too vague, I think. The problem with it being so vague is we deal with those issues today. What did they mean when they said, well, they left it open to interpretation? Well, whose interpretation? It's almost better to just say, you can't do this, you can do this, you can't do this, you can do this. It's very difficult. Anyways, we're going to go ahead and end this here. We will be back with part 3. But until then, hopefully he's going to get into the presidency a little bit more. But until then, have a good day, have a good night.